Thank you, Ota, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak. So, as I mentioned, the subject is super ambitious, but we are living now with an uncomfortable truth that COVID is here to stay. So we really need to think wider about how real estate can help us to evolve to the new model of work and life. My name is Natasha Terinova. I am a program director at Reach UK. We are a VC-backed global scale-up program. And I've got an amazing panelist today with me. And without the further ado, I would like to give the word to my amazing panel. And we will, of course, start with the round of introductions. And it would be great if you guys can talk why, not only introducing what you do, but also let us know why smart cities, buildings, and mobility are important to you and how what you do is connected with the subject. Miimu, perhaps we can start with you.
Thank you, and thank you for the kind invitation. I mean, this is really fascinating panel and the topic. As said, so my name is Miimu Airaksinen, and I come from RIL, which is the Association of Civil Engineers in Finland. And why we are focusing so much about the smart cities and smart buildings is about that we think that, I mean, people are spending most of their time in buildings and in the built environment. So that's why it's important that we are doing it in a nice way, that it's comfortable for us for living, but also efficient for our working environments. And this is the inspiration, and this is where we see that the technology has really the power to do it for all of us, much more environmental friendly, but also increase our well-being.
Thank you, Miimu. Axel, would you like to
Yes,
continue?
of course. So my name is Axel Hars. I'm the co-founder of Myroffice, next generation cleaning services. And why it's important for us that cities becoming smart, buildings are becoming smart, because it helps us to live a better and easier life. Several companies are already into it. For example, you have Amazon with the Amazon Fresh stores, and you have also Google with the Google Nest. We can help your home to become smarter. And I think it will help everyone to become smarter, also help you live a better life. And as you are living your whole life, working your whole life into a building, I think it could help each other and becoming and living in a better environment.
Thank you, Axel. Well, last but not least, Xavier.
Hi, I'm Xavier Perrin. I'm the VP for the global real estate function at Schneider Electric. Our company is a top leader in managing decarbonized energy, right, for our clients. And in real estate, my job is to make sure that our real estate portfolio match with our mission statement. And at the same time, we learn from that COVID situation, which has been kind of really interesting. And I can share with you, out of that 2.5 million square meter in the world and 3.5 of factory, how we look at that and what does that mean for us and what's the next moves.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Tom, welcome to the panel. And we're just doing the round of introductions. And we also wanted to introduce our panelists through the prism of why the subject is important to you and how it relates to what you do. So over to you, Tom.
Fantastic. Excuse me for being late, just on time / late. So I'm Tom Selva. I'm the CEO of Smart Point. We are the most advanced smart locker solution for offices, hospitals, residential, and now also government solutions. And what Smart Points allow users is to deliver all their products and services needs directly to automated points. So we're helping on the zero carbon front. This is something I'm passionate about. We're making sure that those last mile logistics for any service and any product that goes into a city is delivered zero carbon. There's a huge CO2 emissions associated with the delivery of products. Nobody's talking about them. We want to improve that and make sure that our cities are sustainable, and we're here for future generations to come.
Thank you very much, guys. Well, we all know that COVID outbreak, the importance of technology, and totally shaping the way we live and interact with our built environment. And managing environmental footprint, whether this is within the building or in terms of logistics and transportation, was already in focus pre-COVID. And I guess, it's a massive string touch, but COVID and the pandemic for the development of the technology and adoption. And it's great to see that there are some very ambitious targets to reduce the carbon emissions, and a lot of companies already set it in motion. But what we also see is that there's a new focus on smart and healthy buildings. And do you guys think that the virus is leading us to healthier buildings? And what are your views on what making our buildings smart and what making our cities smart? I'd like to address all of the panel to give their views on that. What it actually got to you? Xavier, maybe we can start with you this time because you've some interesting data points on what Schneider is doing in that space.
I think that we believe at that stage that that pandemic situation is going to last for some more time. It was first we thought when it happened, okay, it's 2 months. Then we said, oh, no, it's 6 months. Now we've been a year, and people say, oh, okay, it has been a year, and let's not bet it's going to go away, right? Whatever it takes, because it's not about go away, it's about that it has to go away everywhere at the same time. That's kind of one of the main difficulties. And from our perspective on the carbon footprint, right? So the main driver for the carbon footprint is the carbonized energy, but then is how we consume energy, right? So basically 40% of our building before COVID were empty. It's not just us, it's in the world. Usually the corporate are empty by 40%. So I think something we're trying to address at our company in our real estate function, supporting the business is, okay, how do I make sure I kind of get rid of the empty space so I don't have to heat them or cool them, I don't have to light them, I don't have to clean them, right? It's kind of, let's get rid of the waste. It's kind of interesting in that kind of pandemic crisis, we've been focusing much more, okay, what are we wasting? In the past, we were not really concerned about that because we could not see it. Now it's becoming very obvious, right? So if I told you kind of a year ago that we can get rid of 50% of our portfolio, nobody would have believed it, even if it were possible. Now people at least have unlocked their mind, saying, well, we need to look at it differently, right? So really adjusting what we want to do with the health of the planet, which is kind of important as an ecosystem. It's kind of one of the mission for our real estate team, and it's unbelievable. Over the last year, we made more progress than over the last 6-7 years before, right? So it's really an acceleration of what we can do, and the people awareness is just unbelievable. People who was against any change now are very open because they understand it has to happen.
You know what I think the most interesting thing about this panel today is the difference of perspectives that we have. So Xavier and Miimu, I'd really like you to, so we've got two innovators in the room. We've got Axel and Tom with incredible solutions that fit in this subject really well. What I'd really like to dig into is how you engage with innovators and what technology do you see to help you, with the vision for the future?
Start with, thank you. So, I mean, I think there is really, now is really the moment for new innovations, and especially in the smart buildings, because, we have so much evidence that with the smart systems, by that, like measuring, controlling, knowing better or the user's behavior, so we can save a lot of energy. The studies have shown that up to 30% we can so easily save the energy just by improving the control systems. And when we add on top of that kind of like smart systems and smart control, so we can even save much more energy. And well, energy is of course about the CO2 emissions, but also it's so much about the people's comfort and how they kind of like feel comfortable and they want to use the spaces there. And there I see is a lot of room for new kind of like innovations. For example, how we are using, as Xavier was mentioning, that we should use the spaces much more efficiently. So how we can use much more efficiently mixed use spaces in a way, and also that how we can avoid unnecessary traveling and people's movements. And that's what Tom is actually doing also, that, well, how we are kind of like making it easy for people to get things and the accessibility for different services. So I think there is a lot of kind of like service innovations, but also like those equipment and system innovations.
And just to explain a little bit on that, so it's unbelievable to see how the technology has been enable us to measure things, which in the past we were not aware because we could not see it. Now we can measure everything almost, and above that we can even connect things together, right? So we can connect the dot of what we are doing. We want to understand what's the correlation and what we need to do to achieve something. So we are much more aware of the ecosystem of what we're doing through the technology in real time. As the panelist said before, Mr. Chazat, it's real time, right? We don't have to wait. We're not looking backward. We're kind of looking at the moment. And now with all our machine learning, we can even forecast what's going to happen. So it's unbelievable, that ability that in the past we don't have to say, okay, I want to know what's going to happen in a day which is very cloudy with a lot of traffic, and I've got all my meeting room books. What does that mean? You could even forecast what kind of energy you will need for that. So connecting that dot in the same platform in technology is an unbelievable leverage to do a lot of things which we are not doing before, and making people live, as Miimu say, simpler, right? So you don't have to basically suffer and be a subject. You can become the subject of the technology and not to be just the complement of it.
Thank you. So I would like to turn to Tom and Axel. So you see there's incredible interest from the corporate environment and from people who sort of have a helicopter view of the technology and who are also potentially your clients. What do you see as the biggest barriers of deploying your solutions?
Whoa. First, I totally agree with Xavier, because that's the opacity is one of the challenges we are trying to solve. Right now, the opacity is like in your human body. In human body, you don't know what's happening, and you need some new biotechnologies to give you transparency and to give you a diagnosis of who you are instantly in real time. That's one of the, let's say, advantages. And for the buildings, it's quite the same. Currently, you don't know what's going on in a building. You don't know how many people there are inside. You don't have an app telling you how much electricity you are using. And with new technologies, with IoT, you are kind of a biotechnology for buildings. Same for robots. You can see what's going on. You can deliver a new service. You can give transparency to the owner, to the facility manager, to the property manager. And so in my dreams, you can also detect instantly COVID, virus, and maybe why not forecast new pandemics and quarantine buildings if you detect something instantly. So this is the future we are shaping and we are trying to make. And for the barrier to work with large companies, it's also a game of bargaining, because they are working in the same field as you are. So they are seeing your company as the best, one of the best assets they can have, but they also want their share in these assets. So as we have seen in the biotechnology techs, we can see more and more pharmaceutical companies purchasing new spin-off of universities since 2010, around this time, because R&D is becoming really expensive, and it's often more interesting to buy new companies just out of university. I think it will be the same in the PropTech sector. Large companies will wait a bit, see who will become the champions, and assess their assets, and maybe give it a try with 1, 2, 3 companies, and then buy them and acquire them. So this is how I see we will develop companies and how the sector will develop by itself.
Tom?
Brilliant. I love the human body comparison and simile. It's really good. I think a way to think of the inside of what we know in a building. I'm going to concentrate on the transformational aspect of what we've seen over the last year. There's 2 things that are happened. One, we care more about the user focus. Before, we said user focus was important in a building, but now we care because we need to convince both tenants need to convince their employees to come back. Then property owners want to convince tenants to take on residency in their buildings. So everybody's going, who matters most in the end? It's the final user, right? And this has led to, hey, how do we add more value to the building than there was before? On the second sense, there's a health aspect. How do we make sure that when these users come in, we are really taking care, we're following every single, not only just the legislation, but actually care that they're going to be healthy buildings and best for my users and understand my users better, right? And so suddenly facility managers have come to the fore. Suddenly, human resources are far more important. I've got a lot more work than just managing the workforce. They're managing their workforce in the building. And so I agree with Axel that there's hundreds of new solutions that we're looking at, but also looking at those that have been consolidated. We've benefited from this high demand, but what we're realizing is PropTech, or rather property is behind and tech can do so much. So when finding that we did automated systems for delivery of services and products, now we're also doing visitor systems. You can order a taxi via the Smart Point. You can do a whole host of different things that we weren't doing before because our clients are demanding more value to the final users.
Thank you. I quite like the well-being angle, and I think it's very interesting what Xavier also said in the very beginning, as in how we can how we can use the buildings more, utilize the buildings, I guess would be the better word, more efficiently, and how can we attract people sort of to come back to it? Xavier, would you elaborate on that a little bit? So what is you see in Schneider per se in Paris? What sort of how technology can change this? The well-being angle of the building.
So on the well-being, that's kind of, if you look back a long time ago, I think when Ford, the manufacturer company, Henry Ford, has having a production line, and he used to put some lighting, and then he noticed that when he put more lighting, people were working better, right? So basically, we need to more lighting. And I remember 20 years ago, the question in real estate was, do I have access to daylight? Who has access to daylight? In the past, kind of the top manager at the office in daylight, and can you wear, not the top management, you were in the middle of the building without daylight. And the daylight was something which was kind of at stake, right? And now it's kind of clear that daylight is almost is a right. Everybody should have access to daylight when they work in a building, and we build the building for that, and we feed them out for that. Now I want to use that analogy to see what the trend is. And if you look at air, right? So in the past, people didn't care about the air. I remember 5 years ago when I was based out of China, we were looking at the air pollution within the building with technology to tell people, we provide you air free of pollution, and people who used to give value for that. For people in Europe, it didn't mean anything because the air is not that contaminated outside, right? Now it's becoming, so we are monitoring that. We put some technology in place with the oxygen, and we did some testing with some universities on how does the oxygen enable you to be more productive, right? And if you get in a room and you don't have enough oxygen, you fall asleep, basically. That's what's happened, right? Or then you die if you don't have any oxygen, of course, kind of the last stage, right? So I think we put some technology in place to kind of detect what's the right amount of oxygen because of how people are breathing, the number of people, to make sure you have enough oxygen to get your brain active and being able to participate. And this same thing is that 3 or 4 years ago was not even possible, right? So if you look over the last 2 to 3 years, how far we are coming from looking at, okay, what is good for you, right? From the food. If you go to a corporate canteen, in the past, we used to give them food. It has to be cheap, and then you need to feel empty. Now it's okay. How bio is your food? How healthy is your food? And then the unions in a lot of countries like Germany would say, well, I want to be part of the food program, because if you don't give me good food, bio food, healthy food, then basically you are compromising the people's health in the future. So kind of that dynamic of ecosystem and what we have to deliver to people are really changed, and kind of the technology is a great enabler of that, right? So the oxygen stuff is something which exists, right? You can get that, and you can have on real time to show people that it's okay, right? We're providing the right air quality and the right oxygen level to people.
That's really interesting, because from my personal view is that there were technology trends that works prior to COVID, and they were in focus already. But it's something that definitely comes out of it, and I think this will be COVID legacy, is the whole connection, with the well-being and the levels of productivity within the buildings. The question that I have is, to what extent occupants' health is considered an objective? For example, Xavier, for you, and Miimu, what you see in the organizations that you work with in Finland. And guys, Axel, Tom, I'd also really like to hear from you how this fits into what you do.
I think that's it's really the well-being is becoming more and more important, and this gives maybe an idea that actually currently we are running a research together with university that what is kind of like the best ventilation and air qualities for sleeping conditions, that because we all know that if you are sleeping well, so then you're most effective at work and most innovative, and kind of like it's also for better kind of like life quality as well. So this shows really that building owners are more and more interested about this type of things, that sleeping quality and all of that. So shows really that this is becoming more and more important. And another aspect what we can really see is also the prediction, kind of like at how buildings or built environment is predicting the people's behavior and kind of like helping people to make their everyday life much easier. For example, that we can know that, well, the weather forecast says that it will be rainy soon. So we know that the close by shopping center, people probably go there. What are the services needed there? How we can kind of like give the early warning for the coffee shop keepers that, well, soon maybe a bit more coffee will be needed and more tables and all that kind of like small things which makes your life quality and well-being much easier. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think.
Just maybe one more point on the well-being, because it's interesting to see that in the past, people used to come in the office every day. It was kind of mandatory. Now we realize it's possible not to come to the office. And now the company and the corporation has to look after the people when they're not in the office. How do you feel at home? When you work from home, there's kind of a responsibility from the company. Say, well, you have the right setting, you have the right environment at home. Right? Some company and more company are giving a package for people to buy is a good chair, a good table, right? And there's a lot of improvement on that. But even how do you feel? Do you feel too much isolated to work from home, right? What does that mean? So the psychological risk and healthy is becoming, before it was the health. Now it's not just only the health, it's how do you feel socially, right? To being at home and being kind of locked down from a lot of people in the world. And the company has a role to play in that, right? In the past, people would say, if you work from home, it's your problem, it's a benefit. Don't bother me. Now it's okay. You are forced to work from home. So what do I do to make it easier for you? And as a manager, as a team leader, how do I make sure that you don't suffer that, right? So it's kind of really the shift of how people are looking at people in the company has really changed. It's not, people are not just their asset, and we need to deal with them as the best asset of most of the companies.
Yeah, I really like that angle. So, and you guys see, you as innovators, as providers of technology that helps buildings becoming more smart, that helps cities to become cleaner and more smart. Does this shift in the sort of corporate behavior has any impact on your organization? Do you see that the uptake of your technologies are higher? Has it given you a little bit more opportunities to develop or to innovate?
I would say on a business standpoint, it helps a bit, but not everyone has this mentality. So yeah, we can find some people like Xavier, like Miimu, who will help you a lot to provide new technology, to bring new technology into their buildings. But in general, it's still low. You may find many people like that. But yeah, of course, the meaning of new technologies is always to help people live a better life. That's why we started Myroffice at first. Because in a building, you also have some outside people who are coming at night, cleaning your building. And in 2018, when I started this company, I was in a building at 7 p.m. after a meeting, debriefing with the manager, and I was seeing guys pushing a cart around the building and just turning around the offices. And I was wondering, what are they doing? And when I started to discuss with these guys, they are telling me that they were cleaning the buildings with a broom, with a vacuum. And I was wondering in 2018, when you have Tesla making autonomous car in the random traffic, when you have a rover landing on Mars, how on earth can we still have some guys cleaning, vacuuming at night when you have no daylight? As Xavier said, it's really, really important to have daylight and working on daylight. They have no life. And how is it possible that they can still do these kind of jobs? And that's why we started our company to push new technologies, to give robots to these guys, and to give IoTs to the facility managers so they can monitor what's going on in their building, to give also life to the cleaners so they can go back cleaning the offices during the day, because the main issue, which was the sound of the vacuum, away, which is now at night thanks to the robots. So when you push new technologies in a building to a customer, sometimes it's not also for them, but also for the guys who are operating. And this is what this is the meaning of intelligence for us.
Thank you. Tom, how about you? There's the product that you're doing is, I find personally extremely interesting because it touches, the devil is in the definition, is it prop tech? Is it clean tech? Is it retail tech? Especially, because you enable the local economy, you enable the zero emission. What drove you to create such a product that sort of ticks so many boxes?
I think it was, so it's one at a personal level of, we wanted to have a single point in a building that could provide you with every service in a city and every from any shop anywhere in the world at no additional cost. This would add value to a building, right? That's where we wanted. We were engineers. But then when we realized is if we could speak to the right providers who wanted to deliver products with zero carbon, and higher value to the community as a whole, and even small retailers that had that dream, that we could provide that. And I think one huge aspect of what's happened in the last year, we don't like about the idea of giving away our data. That said, we hear horror stories of Facebook, etc., in the US and in Asia with Tencent. In Europe, our data is super well protected. And I think something beautiful that is happening is we get more data now. We have predictability over what the user wants, what are the preferences. And with that predictability, we can offer better services and safer. So if we talk about ordering a product that you don't need it in 2 hours, you don't need a diesel van rushing to be able to deliver it to you, but you need it next day, then we know we have 24 hours that we can put it in an electrical van that has a set route, that is doing zero emissions, and we have much more guarantee that we can have the time to set up our operations correctly for that product. And when we deliver it to you, we know that we have an hour before you want to pick it up to turn on the disinfection UV lights within your compartment so that we can disinfect that product before you receive it. So if you give us that chance and that information, which people have been more open to share thanks to buildings trying to be safer. Miimu was talking about this the other day, and I loved her viewpoint, which was we now have people flow control. We know when people come in and out because we want a safer environment. We looked at China with people traveling with their masks on all the time. We thought that's a bit crazy, and now we go actually, preventative measures and more control is maybe something that we could think about without intruding over people's rights. So now when we know that service providers or delivery people walk into the building, they only walk into a service point where they deliver a package, and then I know that package is going to be disinfected, and I have that control because I've given up a little more data of how I want to receive that service.
That's great. I actually would like to go to Miimu and I'd ask her to elaborate a little people flow subject that Tom was referring to, just for the benefit of the audience.
Yes, the people flow is what we are thinking is really important, because as Tom was mentioning, so we need to that predictability, and we need to have kind of like, first we need the people flows, kind of like that, for example, roads and shopping centers, that we know that, well, certain amount of people are most probably shopping at that time or using these roads or these bus stops or something. But then as Tom was pointing out, so it's extremely important also to know the personal kind of like preferences, in order to serve you better, in order to make your life quality better. Of course, taking into account the privacy issues and all that, but that's extremely important also for the safety issues, that we know, for example, that the firefighters, so they would know that where, for example, elderly people or some other vulnerable people who need more assistance, so where they are living, that in case of emergency, so we can make sure that we are rescuing them in the best way. And as Tom was mentioning now in the COVID situations, that we know that, well, these persons would need extra safety and extra disinfection and all that. So that's extremely important. Of course, we need to make sure that privacy is always secured, but I see there are a lot of potential and a lot of things which are making not only our life easier, but really our life much safer and kind of like really prevent those virus or at least kind of like minimizing the harms what the viruses are doing for us.
Xavier, I'd really like to get you included in the conversation.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of
reading my
interesting
mind.
because that if you look, well, in the past, without the technology, we used to have building a box, and then we need to fit people in the box. And basically, it was we don't change the box. We ask people to adapt to the box, right? And now with the technology in the pre-production before designing a building, you can already have an immersive experience to understand what works, what doesn't work, right? In making sure when you pick up some element of the building, you can even choose what you want and test it before even launching it, right? And now what we have created is a box which is flexible, right? So basically, you put the people in the center and you make sure the box works for them and not the other way around. And it's a big change, right? I was kind of surprised 3 years ago in Israel to see that when you're a software company and you hire developers, you need to make sure you can enable them to come with their pet at work. If they can't come with their dog or their cat, basically, they won't come to work for you. Just imagine that 10 years ago, I would have told you, you're going to come at work with your dog because it makes you feel good, right? And it was impossible, right? So how do you adjust a building when you have 100 dogs on the floor to make sure that it works for everybody, right? How can technology help us to control that, to manage that? And it has been really the big shift. And adjusting the flexibility we have on our building today are pretty unbelievable, the new one, right? Because we know that what is true today, what we learned over the last 2 years, that whatever is true today won't be true maybe in a year. We don't know, right? It was a pandemic this time. We don't know next time, right? If the temperature were to go 4 degrees higher, it will change everything we're doing, right? So we need to make sure we build something which is very flexible and we can monitor it and with the technology to adjust it. So at the end, people can work within that environment.
Interesting. You know what, guys, I really want? I want some real examples. So, for example, Xavier, from you, as a part of a large organization, what do you see as an immediate need, and what did you guys do differently to address this?
First, we start measuring. We used to do that, but we accelerate how we measure things, right? So, for instance, from what do we consume, how much do we is it carbonized or not, and how do we decarbonize, and how much space we really need, right, in an office, which is kind of a main roadblocker, and how do we make sure that people can understand that we are going to change something, and it's not bad or good, it's justified, right? To be able with the data, I think the power of the technology is that the data give you the evidence and the fact, right? If I tell you will be fine, if it's like a doctor, if I'm going to practice a surgery on you, don't worry, you do worry, right? Because it's you, right? Now, if I can explain you what we're going to do and I can show you why we're doing it, so people feel much more relaxed. So when you take, I don't know, a community of 2,000 people and you change the size of the building by half, and you stop having a meeting room as you used to have and so on, you need to be able to onboard people, right? So there's a much more democracy, right, with the employees. It's not a top down. You need to be able to convince people that you're doing it for the good things. And the purpose, it's really interesting to see that the purpose to go to the office or the purpose of work has changed, right? Because we have been forced to work from home. Basically, what the frontier between my home and my work is very thin. So how do we address the purpose? Why are we doing something, right? How proud are you to work for a company which is care about the community, right? So there's a lot of things which we are not which we are considering. So when we go to our business, real estate, we look at, okay, if we take a lease, it has to be zero net carbon. We even start looking what was the carbon in building the building put, right? Now you have some measure for that. What about well-being, right? You have LEED Platinum for instance, for sustainability. Now you have well-being as well label now, right? Which are emerging. Saying, well, if I've got a well-being label, it means I really, in the conception of my building, thought about it, right? How I'm making my building more inclusive, right? To all the disabled people. All that stuff were not top of the agenda, and now they're really becoming top. So, and we have global program to make sure we can pursue that opportunities at Schneider.
I'm going to say something quite controversial here. So this is really important for Schneider. And, there's this concept of scope 3 emissions, right? This is the emissions that are indirect from your operation. So to what extent would you prefer, for example, to use a product or a service that Tom provides that that their delivery would be zero emission versus giving giving out the business to someone else? Sort of, would you pick the right provider
So we're looking, we're in the search for some big building in the world, and then you look and say, okay, this building, you will be able to have that level of comfort from the heating, right? Is it acceptable to be 22 degrees in a building in summer? Yes, it is. Is it acceptable to be 26? No, because you can't work. And now people used to say, I want 18 because that's where I feel comfortable. And people used to put jacket in the summer in building because it was cool too much. And we get to the concept, it's not about what people want, it's what they need. It's not what they need individually to be collectively together, right? I think the concept that we all link to each other, right? If a country over carbonize, basically the other will have to compensate. So we all link with something, right? If I contaminate the water, I will impact other people. So basically, so we're happy to make some trade-offs. Well, we're happy to have not less comfort, but to have another level of comfort because there's something bigger, right? And back to Tom's point, very good, is why do you need things straight away, right? I order something on internet, I want it. If it's a medicine, you may want to have it right now. If it's a gift, you may not want to have it in the next 5 minutes, right? So how people are adjusting to, okay, what is more important, how we do things, that our needs to have it done the way we want, right? And there's a big shift. If you don't have the corporate program for traveling, for instance, in the past, people used to travel a lot in business, and I say, okay, business has a huge carbon emission, and we calculate that. So that's kind of unbelievable, the change we're having. So I hope I answer your question.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to hear what Tom thinks and on that point, as well as Miimu and Axel. So where does our responsibility lie? Not only as people who work for organizations, but how do we purchase things and how it is delivered to us? What do we do? I mean, if there's a lot of opinions out there saying that if it doesn't move a needle. So what you guys think?
Fortunately, for full disclosure, we work with Schneider as well. They were one of the first of the we already work with 100 of the Fortune 500 companies, and they were one of the first backers of the technology, and rightly so, because Schneider really pushed on the ESG and the zero emissions, and the conversations were very easy and forthright from the beginning. And I think one important aspect of those conversations pinpoint on when we consume, all of us look at price. And we all have that in common. And the largest denominator for all of us is it cheap or not, right? And that's how we make most of our decisions. The part of whether it's going to help myself and my future generations in keeping the planet, where it should be in 50, 100 years, we make that as a third or fourth consideration, unfortunately, right? And I think it's important that new technologies that are going to take the space in the next 10, 20 years are the ones that are measuring this as one of the primary KPIs. So when we do that, is what we're trying to tell the user is, look, we're going to get it for you cheapest, and also we're going to make it zero carbon. So when we speak to our biggest retailers, from Nespresso to MediaMarkt to Decathlon, what we tell them is we can deliver it cheaper for you. When we have more certainty of delivery, we can have a better engagement with the user. And on the user, we can tell them, because it's going to be cheaper and subsidized by these companies that want a better conversation with you, we're going to give you a zero carbon delivery. And the only way to do that is to work also with the Schneiders of this world and tell them, give us a space in the building, give us that rapport or understanding with your users, so we can bring the two together, the providers and your user or employee pool.
Just one more point interesting, but I'm saying that people believe it will be more expensive if it's zero carbon or neutral. It's not. For them, it's cheaper. It's kind of interesting because sometimes if I look in Axel business in the cleaning, right, the robot cleaning, it's cheaper than if you do the normal way. So basically, do we want to pay less? That's why sometimes like business cases are very easy to present. Say, well, I'm going to pay less. I've got all that benefit, right? So, and people used to say, when I've got benefit, I have to pay more money, because that was the misconception we had. Then we have the scale of the business, like Tom. Tom is having a franchise. When he multiplies by 10 his franchise, we'll have economy of scale. It's going to become so competitive that the rest will retire by themselves, right? So I think the price is the main component, but technology enables them to do things cheaper most of the time, because we look after the efficiency of the process end to end.
and I think it's also like extremely important that we think really kind of like a bit differently and out of the box. A good example in Finland, what we have is that we wanted to make a really high efficient zero emission buildings. And it was actually heating is one really big component here up in the north. And what we did was that we did a really good energy efficiency in the building. And that was, of course, a bit more expensive compared to the traditional building. But because that was so energy efficient, so we could actually exclude one big heated unit. And by saving that price, so actually the energy efficient building was cheaper than the traditional building. So totally kind of like new concept actually allowed us to do a low carbon building with lower cost. So that's also kind of like that use the existing technologies in a new way. So that gives the advantage on price level as well.
Yeah, I can't agree more with all of you. It's always the same. Of course, one of the first factors that we look at when it's an innovation or when it's a service, it's the price. So when your price or when you're asking some efforts from your customers to take something more expensive but better, it will depend on where is the value in the list of your customer. Is it at the top of this list or is it at the bottom of the list? And when it comes down to environment and carbon footprint, it often is at the bottom of the list. And so you have to bring more value to the customers at the same price. And in the meantime, you have to also bring this kind of value as a carbon footprint zero or reducing carbon emissions. And this is how new technologies will help the world and how we will help also your customers. But if you expect your customers to pay more for the same value, you will go in a dead end. So yeah, I can't agree more with Xavier, for example. And by using robots, for example, doing our cleaning, by digitizing it, we are optimizing and making it more efficient. So we are consuming less electricity, less water, and we are optimizing everything and giving it on a transparency level because we are bringing the map on the path on the robots in the building. So we are also monitoring the consumption of electricity. We can give some new measure to Xavier and to other large companies and how much electricity do they have to use to clean their offices. And yes, we are working in a sustainable standpoint, but that's not our core value. That's just a bonus we are bringing to them because they don't want to pay for that. They expect them normal.
Our responsibilities, Natasha, goes much beyond the company. If I look in our business, we have a big global supply chain business when we manufacture in the electricity, hardware, a lot of things. Then we look at the packaging, right? And say, okay, when we package something in India and we ship it, how is the package carbon footprint, right? So people sell us that. So our global supply chain has got people looking to the very depth of our supply chain to understand that people will make them work. We want them to be as green as we are, because otherwise, if you buy something which is not green, you look good, but you're making the bad. So you have that responsibility to go to that level. And I read an article recently that the investors start looking at green company, and have looked in the real estate market. If you deliver a very green building, it will be a higher rent and then a higher cost price on the market than the non-green building, because in the future, corporation will ask, I want a green building. So in terms of asset, green is a very good investment as well, right?
I wanted to add to that because I think I've just sort of realized there's one interesting component that there are also user-led initiatives. You've been talking about packaging, Xavier, when we deliver to any single point or any of the couriers deliver to our points, our users have requested whether they could recycle the box whilst keeping the contents of the product and leave the box in another compartment for recycling. We've added this at no additional cost. It's obviously something that is a burden for us, but it's a service that we can provide to the user. But I think what's interesting is that this is user-led. It hasn't been the companies themselves, but users identify what is greener and what is not. There is a level of education, and we will take 2-3 years until we can really get to CO2 as the final or even inherent carbon in a product. But slowly we will request better things for ourselves, better things for the environment, and we as technologies need to be responsive to that.
I absolutely love this subject, guys, and I ran a very interesting project before I joined Reach and Second Century Ventures. I ran the bioplastic project for one of the London airports, and the way the corporates can look into their purchasing strategy is like super important. And I had an amazing opportunity to advise them on that. And it's not only about the product, as Xavier said. It's the product can be bioplastic, but it's if delivered from miles away overseas in China, that kind of, that's completely outweighs the benefits of that. So it's great to see the understanding from the corporates as well as user-led initiatives such as that. Axel, I think I've cut you off here with my comment.
No, I was just aligned with what Tom was saying. I don't expect your customer to change his habits. You have to push new technologies that ease its habits and make him greener by itself. But don't expect people to change. Does that work?
Yeah, and I also, Miimu, that was an absolutely great. And I actually have this panel on community with the smart cities lead from Finland, who have done an incredible work in a private-public partnership to reduce the level of plastics across the city of Helsinki. And I thought this project was absolutely fantastic, incentivizing. Yeah, I think that's the word. Providing incentives to the corporate with then the private organization following suit. I know that we only have 5 minutes left, and at this point I'd really like to address the audience because we've got an amazing panel for you here today. We've got Xavier from Schneider, we've got Miimu. So if you are an innovator, if you have technology that is potentially is interesting for these guys, reach out to them on LinkedIn. And we also, of course, we have Tom and Axel from Myroffice and Smart Point. And if their technology is interesting, reach out to them on LinkedIn as well. But our doors, I think, I'm sorry guys, I'm saying it for all of us, but our doors is wide open at Reach UK. We always wanted to hear from the industry partners and from the technology innovators and hopefully be helpful. So that's one last thing that I'd like you guys to say. What would you like to leave the audience with? Sort of what is the key thing for you in the smart cities, smart buildings, and mobility? So what's the most important thing for you? Xavier, Miimu, Tom, Axel.
Okay, I start. Somebody has to start, right? So I think that we should not underestimate. So the pace of change is going faster and faster. And what seems to be impossible 3 years ago now is possible. And I think when we shouldn't be thinking, well, in 10 years, but 10 years might be in 2 years. And sometimes when we plan a relocation in 2-3 years, we have a decision say, well, in 3 years, you won't be doing that. Say, you're wrong. We will be doing it. I say, well, at least we can agree we don't know if it will be still relevant, right? So the things are changing, like printing, right? Why you need printing? Kind of what the technology company providers as a solution for meeting, right? Right now we are in that kind of webinar, and it's much better than it was on a call. In 2 to 3 years, we will be maybe just hologram, and it will be a fantastic experience. So we are still in the middle edge of the evolution from a technology perspective, and the best is to come.
Wonderful. I agree with you, Xavier. And I think kind of like, I mean, as Xavier was mentioning, so the future is now, it's already there. And therefore, I mean, don't compromise. I mean, you can have a good living, you can have the zero carbon footprint. I mean, it's really, I mean, everything is possible. It's just a matter that we do the right things.
Yeah, I can't agree more with both of you. New companies are emerging. New technologies are pushing their way into the largest companies in the world, such as Schneider. And they're also taking this subject as one of their principles. So everything is coming, everything is shaping, transforming. As Xavier said, with the virtual augmented reality, we are seeing new technologies, and we think that everything is changing. It's still slow, but it's at a higher pace than beforehand. So we have hope for that, and we have started to make some changes already with some early adopters. Like Xavier was also one of the early adopters of technology. So we believe in them, and we know it will be a better world.
Last but not least, Tom.
I'm taking on the subject of of what is a smart city, I think we need to consider it as a stack. And we've talked about all the elements within, smart buildings and the users. Recently, Andrew Baum, who's a distinguished professor in Oxford for PropTech, talked about smart cities being an impossibility, impossible to approach them on a bottom-up level. They have to be built from the top down, like they're doing in China, or this was tested in Masdar Zero Carbon. I was a big part of that, and it also doesn't really work. You need the user as well to push from below, and it's a bottom-up, top-down approach. Now, what we've been talking about today is there's actuators, there's the technology, and there's the accelerators. Xavier and Miimu are the accelerators. We're the technologies. We're responding to what users want. When we talk about recycling, we can promote it. We need the accelerators to promote it even harder, and the users will eventually get there. I don't think it's a bottom up. I don't think it's a top down. I think it's a middle, up and down.
Thank you very much. Well, from me, I kind of like to conclude, and this is something that I increasingly think about, is that for smart cities, we need smart society. And things like the user-led initiatives on recycling is just inspiring. And I actually think we are getting there. And yeah, on this note, thanks a lot for listening. Thanks a lot for being here with us. And Wouter, wonderful to have this opportunity to address your audience. And I hope everyone has found it interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Much.